Hey folks, today I'm going to be talking about the single best piece of advice I ever got and how it transformed me personally, how it transformed how I think about life, and how I think it put me in a position to succeed. Let's dive into it.
SaaS CMO Pro.
Hey folks, Bill Macaitis here, former SVP of Marketing at Salesforce, former CMO at Zendesk, and former CRO CMO at Slack. What I'm going to talk to you today about the single best piece of advice I ever got. And so the story is it was one of my first jobs, and we would do a last day lunch for people whenever they would move on. And so there are usually about 10 of us. We would go out to lunch. I remember I would always ask the person when they were leaving, because I was very young, just started my career. And I asked them hey, what's your best piece of advice in general for business, for life? And I remember this was an individual, he told me, he said, Bill, it doesn't matter if you're employed or not. What matters is if you're employable. And that was something I had to sink in for a little bit. I'm what does that really mean? And what I discovered over the years is it's not about hey, your current job or whatever title you have. That may be great and that may be fantastic, but it's really more about the skills that you're developing. It's really thinking about hey, every day, how do I add a new skill? How do I learn? How do I devote myself to this craft so that I'm always improving? And I remember I kind of took that with me, right? No matter where I was at, if I was employed or if not employed, I was just trying to learn. I remember for me, a big one was kind of my earlier days before, my B2B side with Salesforce, Zendesk, and Slack. I was on the B2C side, and I worked for a lot of large media companies like News Corp and IGN Entertainment and Rotten Tomatoes and all these different, kind of fun, big properties. And at the time, SEO was starting to become a thing. And this wasn't something I could have enrolled for my university class. Maybe they have an SEO class now, but it was just one of those that I could kind of see this was going to be big, and I really want to learn about it. And I remember every day after work when I got home, I would just go on these SEO forums and I would just read and read and read and read. I'd read every article I could find, every podcast I could find. I would just consume this content, and eventually I think I got pretty good at it, right? And that was a big thing for us at IGN Entertainment when we started really leaning into this SEO strategy. We saw traffic, have a significant increase for the long run. And it was a skill set that I took with me, for future companies. When I went to the B2B side, I leveraged SEO a lot. We did a lot of content marketing. And I think today this is really relevant too, because we all see this, right? This massive tidal wave of AI has come upon us. And for a lot of people, it's really scary, right? What does this mean? What does this mean to my job? I think for some other people, it's oh, this is an amazing new tech. It's going to transform how we work, how we go about our daily lives. And, for me, I'm I just want to learn about it, right? So I listen to a ton of podcasts. I'm constantly on YouTube watching videos on it. I use a lot of these tools myself, my daily life, for my professional career. I'm constantly on ChatGPT. For some of the video content I put out, I'm finding out different ideas or just best practices. So you can either look at this as a trend that's a fad that's going to go away, or you can look at this, hey, this is a new skill that I can learn, that I can just take a little time and embrace and try to make myself more employable. And so personally, I think that really transformed me, from a career standpoint. Every time I was looking at a new role, I had a lot of skills, even skills that maybe I wasn't using at the current job. I knew I could leverage them at my next job, and I would talk about it. And so, I'd be curious to hear from you guys, what is the best single piece of advice that you ever got? I think we've all had those where they've personally shaped us. They've kind of transformed us. And I would love to hear that. So put those in the comments, and thanks again for joining.